The rain battered against the floor, took ceiling windows of the penthouse, blurring the neon lights of the city into a smear of cold, indifferent colors. I stood in the center of the living room, my fingers curled so tightly around the crumpled pregnancy test that the edges dug into my palms. The paper was damp, not from the rain, but from the nervous sweat that had been pooling in my hands for the last hour. Sitting on the plush velvet sofa across from me was Chen Yu, the man I had loved for 5 years. He was scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the etche-roche blue light of the screen, completely ignoring the fact that my entire world was crumbling in front of him. Next, draped lazily over the armrest in a silk slip dress that cost more than my yearly rent, was Lin Jiaojiao. She was twirling a strand of her perfectly curled hair, a smirk playing on her glossy lips. Lin Wan. Are you seriously going to keep this up? Jiao Jiao's voice was sickeningly sweet, dripping with a condescension that made my stomach churn. Shen Yu already told you. He is never going to marry a woman who dropped out of college and spends her days waiting tables at a diner, using a fake pregnancy test to force a marriage. That is just pathetic. I looked at the test in my hand. It wasn't fake. But before I could speak, Chen Yu finally looked up. He didn't look at me with love, or even concern. He looked at me with annoyance, as if I were a stain on his expensive Sierra pet. Jie Xiao is right, Wan, he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He tossed his phone onto the coffee table with a clatter. My parents made it very clear. Our family cannot accept someone of your background. You are nothing but a burden. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin, white band. He flicked it onto the glass table. It slid across the surface and stopped right at the edge, dangerously close to falling. Take this, he said, not even bothering to look me in the eye. There is 50,000 in it. Get an abortion, take the money. Don't ever come back to bother us. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the relentless drumming of the rain outside. 50,000. He thought he could buy my dignity, my child, and my future for $50,000. When I was just a terrified teenager, my own parents had done the exact same thing. They had screamed at me, called me a disgrace to the family name, and thrown me out into the freezing winter streets, because I was pregnant and unmarried. I had Neri died that night. I had Li Aaron the Hayrod way that blood meant nothing, and love was often just a transaction. I looked at the CAR, then at Chen Yu, and finally at Jiao Jiao, who was watching me with hungry, expectant eyes. She wanted to show. She wanted to see me beg, to see me cry, to see me break. I took a deep breath, forcing the tremor out of my hands. I straightened my spine, lifting my chin. Keep your money, Chen Yu, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, and keep your child. I don't want anything from either of you. Jiao Jiao's eyes narrowed. She stood up, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she stalked toward me. You think you are so noble, don't you? You think Chen Yu will regret this? Look at yourself. You are wearing a cheap coat and shivering. You have nothing. She stopped inches from me, invading my personal space. I could smell her expensive perfume, a cloying mix of vanilla and musk that made me nauseous. You are nothing but a desperate little tramp, she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Shen Yu is going to be the heir to the Lin family empire soon. Do you really think he needs a waitress? You are just a stain he is trying to wipe off his shoe. I stared at her, refusing to blink. If I am such a stain, why are you so afraid of me? Her face twisted in rage. Before I could react, she shoved me. It wasn't a gentle push, she put her entire body weight behind it. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the edge of the rug. I crashed into the heavy oak door frame, a ring pain shooting through my shoulder. I gasped, clutching my air, but I didn't fall. I looked up to see Jiao Jiao laughing, a cruel, triumphant sound. Get out, she spat. And don't come back until you on your place. Chen Yu didn't move. He didn't say a word to stop her. He just watched, his expression bored, as the woman he claimed to love assaulted me in his living room. That silence hurt more than the bruise forming on my shoulder. It was the final nail in the coffin of our 5-year relationship. I didn't say another word. I turned around, opened the heavy door, and walked out into the hallway. I didn't run. I walked with as much dignity as I could muster, even though my heart was shattering into a million pieces. When I stepped out of the building, the storm hit me like a physical blow. The rain was freezing, soaking through my thin coat in seconds. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't have a destination. I just walked. The city streets were empty, The usual hustle and bustle washed away by the downpour. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, creating distorted shadows that seemed to chase me. My shoulder throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I felt small, alone, and utterly defeated. I walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 20 minutes. The cold was seeping into my bones, making my teeth chatter uncontrollably. I tried to think about the future, about how I was going to pay rent, how I was going to raise a baby on my own, but my mind was a blank slate of panic. Suddenly, the world tilted, my vision swam, dark spots dancing at the edges of my eyes. My legs, weak from the shock and the cold, finally gave out. I collapsed onto the sidewalk, the rough concrete scraping against my knees. I tried to push myself up, but my arms wouldn't cooperate. The rain plastered my hair to my face, blinding me. I curled into a ball, trying to preserve whatever dull earth I had left, and closed my eyes. Maybe if I just slept for a minute, the pain would stop. Maybe I would wake up and this would all be a nightmare. The voice was deep, resonant, and cut through the sound of the rain like a knife. It was a voice I hadn't heard in 10 years, a voice I had tried so hard to forget. I forced my eyes open. Through the curtain of rain, I saw a pair of black leather shoes stop in front of me. Then, a large black umbrella bloomed over me, blocking out the relentless downpour. I looked up, squinting against the gloom. Standing over me was a man in a tailored charcoal suit. He was holding the umbrella with one hand, his other hand tucked into his pocket. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of the umbrella, but I knew those eyes, sharp, intelligent, and currently filled with a mixture of anger and concern. I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. He crouched down, bringing himself to my eye level, up close. He looked even more devastatingly handsome than I remembered. The boyish charm was gone, replaced by the hard edges of a man who wielded immense power. He was the heir to the Lu Empire, a man whose name was whispered in board rooms and society pages alike. You look terrible, he said, his tone clipped, but his eyes were scanning me frantically, checking for injuries. I'm fine, I lied, trying to push myself up again. Just leave me alone. You are not fine, he snapped. He reached out and grabbed my arm, the one Jiao had shoved, pulling me up with effortless strength. You are freezing, you are shaking, and you have a bruise forming on your shoulder. It's nothing, I muttered, looking away. You didn't fall, he said, his voice dropping an octave. Who did this to you? I shook my head. It doesn't matter. It's in the past. It matters to me, he growled. He didn't wait for my permission. He swept me up into his arms, searing me bridal style. I gasped, instinctively clutching his lapels to steady myself. He smelled of rain, expensive tobacco, and that distinct AR scent that had haunted my dreams for a decade. Put me down, Lu Jingchen, I hissed, struggling weakly. People will see. Let them see, he said coldly. He carried me toward a sleek black car idling at the curb. The driver, a stoic older man, immediately jumped out and opened the rear door. Lu Jingchen slid into the back seat, pulling me with him. He didn't let go of me once we were inside. He kept one arm wrapped tightly around my waist, pulling me against his chest as if he were afraid I would vanish if he let go. The car pulled away from the curb, merging seamlessly into the Ross traffic. The interior was warm and smelled of leather. I sat there shivering, acutely aware of the heat radiating from his body. Why were you here? I asked finally, my voice trembling. You are supposed to be in London. I came back for you, he said simply. I froze. I looked up at him, reaching his face for any sign of mockery, but his expression was deadly serious. Don't be ridiculous, I whispered. You haven't spoken to me in 10 years. You probably forgot I even existed. I could never forget you, he said, his hand coming up to cup my face. His thumb brushed away a raindrop from my cheek. I looked for you, Lin Wan, for years, but your parents moved, and you vanished off the face of the Roth. My parents disowned me, I reminded him bitterly. Just like Chen Yu did tonight. Lu Jingchen's eyes darkened at the mention of the name. Shen Yu, the idiot who just let you walk out into a storm. He doesn't know I'm with you, I said. He thinks I'm nobody. He is wrong, Lu Jingchen said fiercely. He leaned in closer, his face inches from mine. The air in the car suddenly felt very thin. You are the only woman I have ever loved. And I am done waiting. Before I could process his words, he closed the distance between us. His lips crashed onto mine, hungry and demanding. It wasn't a gentle kiss, it was a claiming. It was 10 years of longing, frustration, and anger poured into a single moment. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded him that I was pregnant, that I was a mess, that I was damaged goods. But I didn't. I melted into him, my hands tangling in his hair, kissing him back with a desperation that surprised even me. He tasted of rain and power. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine, his eyes sea-watching mine. "Come home with me," he whispered. "Let me take care of you. Let me take care of the baby." I stared at, my heart pounding in my chest. "You know, I know everything," he said softly. "I have been watching over you, Lin Wen. Even when you couldn't see me." He pulled me tighter against him, wrapping his suit jacket around my shivering shoulders. As the car sped through the rainy streets toward his penthouse, I realized that my life was about to change forever. The girl who had been discarded by her parents and her boyfriend was gone. I was finally going to fight back. And this time, I wasn't going to be alone. The car ride to the Lu estate was a blur of city lights and silence. I sat pressed against Lu Jingchen, the warmth of his body seeping through my damp clothes, chasing away the bone-deep chill of the storm. He didn't speak again, but his arm remained a solid, unyielding presence around my shoulders. I watched the familiar streets of the city give way to the exclusive, tree-lined avenues of the wealthy district. My mind was a chaotic storm of its own, replaying Chen Yu's cruel words, Jiao Jiao's vicious shove, and the shocking, wrath-shattering kiss in the backseat of the car. When the car finally slowed and turned through a set of wrought iron gates, I realized we weren't going to his downtown penthouse. We were heading to the Lu family's prim Rai estate. Panic cold pierced through the lingering haze of his kiss. This was his family's home, a place of immense wealth and even more immense expectations. I was a shivering waitress with a scandalous past and a secret I wasn't sure how to share. I whispered, my voice really rasped. "You can't take me here. Your parents." "My parents are in Europe for the next 3 months." He interrupted smoothly, his gaze fixed forward. "This house is mine, and you are my guest." The word guest felt inadequate, but I didn't award. The car glided to a stop beneath a grand portico. A butler was already waiting, holding a large umbrella. He opened the door, his eyes flickering briefly over my disheveled state before settling into an expression of perfect, professional neutrality. He didn't ask questions, he simply led us inside. The interior of the mansion was breathtaking, all polished marble serene ceilings, and tasteful, muted lighting. But I was too overwhelmed to appreciate the architecture. Jingchen didn't pause in the grand foyer. He guided me straight to a private elevator, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. The touch was possessive yet reassuring. The elevator opened directly into a luxurious suite. It was a la larger than the appartement I had been renting, decorated in new armed tones of cream and gold, with a massive window overlooking the rain-swept gardens. A fire was already crackling in the hearth, casting a golden glow across the room. Jingchen said softly, gesturing toward a door on the left. "There are fresh clothes, towels, and toiletries in the bathroom. Get out of those wet things before you catch pneumonia. I will have some hot tea and soup brought up." I nodded mutely, my legs feeling like lead. I stumbled into the bathroom, a space of pure opulence with a deep soaking tub and marble countertops. I peeled off my ruined clothes, my reflection in the mirror making me wince. My face was pale, my hair a tangled mess. But it was my shoulder that drew my attention. A dark, ugly bruise was already blossoming where Jiao Jiao had shoved me into the doorframe. I traced the tender skin with my fingertips, a fresh wave of humiliation washing over me. I took the longest, hottest shower of my life, letting the water scald away the grime of the city streets and the lingering scent of Jiao Jiao's cloying perfume. Wrapped in a plush heated towel, I found a pile of clothes laid out on the vanity, a soft cashmere sweater, silk lounge pants, and thick wool socks. They were clearly new, the tag still attached. I slipped them on, the luxurious fabrics feeling alien against my skin, but the earth was a balm to my battered soul. When I emerged from the bathroom, a silver tray was waiting on a low table by the fire. Jingchen had changed as well. He was now in dark sweatpants and a simple black shirt, his hair slightly damp. The formidable CEO was gone, replaced by a man who looked tired and deeply concerned. He sat beside me on the plush rug as I ate the simple chicken soup. He didn't press me for details, he just sat with me in the quiet, the only sound the crackle of the fire, and the distant rumble of thunder. It was a domestic intimacy I had never experienced, A profound sense of being read for that brought a sudden, stinging pressure behind my eyes. "Your shoulder?" he said quietly. His gaze fixed on the bruise visible above the neckline of the sweater. "It's fine," I mumbled, looking down at my bowl. "Just a bruise." Instead, he reached out and gently tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. His touch was incredibly tender, a stark contrast to the bruising kiss he had given me in the car. He said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite name, "You're not fine. And you don't have to pretend to be anymore." The dam broke. The tears I had held back for 5 years, for 10 years finally spilled over. I didn't sob or wail, they just fell, silent and relentless, tracking hot paths down my cheeks. I dropped my spoon and buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking with the force of a decade of suppressed grief. Jingchen didn't hesitate. He pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me in a fierce, protective embrace. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't tell me it would be okay. He just held me, his hand stroking my hair as I cried for the girl who had been thrown out into the cold, for the woman who had been treated like trash, and for the child I was carrying into an uncertain future. "I'm pregnant." I choked out against his shirt, the words feeling heavy and terrifying on my tongue. "I'm pregnant, Jingchen." He told me to get rid of it. He went completely still, for a heart-stopping moment. I thought I had made a terrible mistake. I pulled back slightly, fear gripping my chest as I watched his face for rejection, for the same disgust I had seen in Chen Yu's eyes. But there was no disgust. His eyes were wide, his expression a complex tapestry of shock, pain and then a dawning, fierce resolve. His gaze dropped to my stomach, then back to my face. "Pregnant," he repeated, the word sounding foreign and sacred on his lips. "I didn't know how to tell you," I whispered, fresh tears spilling over. "I was going to figure it out on my own, I always—" "No," he said, his voice rough. He framed my face with both hands, his thumbs wiping away my tear. "You are not going to figure it out on your own. You are me. You are not alone in this. Not anymore." He leaned his forehead against mine, his breathing unsteady. He murmured, as if trying to comprehend the reality of it, "Our baby." The word "or" sent a jolt of electricity through me. It wasn't just his child, it was ours. A tangible symbol of the love we had lost and somehow, impossibly found again. The next few weeks were a surreal existence. I lived in the Lu estate, co-owned in a world of safety and quiet luxury. Jingchen was a constant, steady presence. He was attentive without being overbearing, giving me space when I needed it, but always there when I reached out. We talked for hours by the fire, piecing together the lost decade. He told me about his feudal roches, his frustration, his unwavering belief that I was out there somewhere. I told him about the grueling years of survival, the loneliness, the small victories that had kept me going. He never once mentioned Chen Yu or my parents. He was giving me the grace to heal on my own terms. But I knew the storm was coming. My pregnancy would soon become visible. My past would eventually catch up with me. One eve, as we stood together on the balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he turned to me. The golden light caught the sharp angles of his face, softening his usually stern features. He said, his voice low and serious, "I need you to know something. I am not doing this out of obligation or pity. I am doing this because I love you. I have always loved you." He took my hand, pressing it against his chest so I could feel the steady, strong beat of his heart. "Let me be your husband. Let me be the father of our child, not because you need saving, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." I looked into his eyes, seeing my own reflection, seeing a future I had never dared to dream of. The fear was still there, a lingering shadow of the past, but it was eclipsed by a profound, overwhelming certainty. "Yes," I whispered, the word feeling like a key turning in a lock. "Yes, Jingchen, I will marry you." He pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a tenderness that promised forever. In that moment, the ghost of the girl who had been discarded in the rain finally laid to rest. I was no longer Lin Wan, the unwanted daughter or the betrayed girlfriend. I was Lin Wan, the woman who had survived, and the woman who was finally, truly, home. 3 years had passed since that rainy night, and the woman who had once shivered on a wet sidewalk was now a distant memory. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my dressing room, adjusting the emerald green silk of my gown, the fabric draped elegantly over my curves, a testament to the confidence that had blossomed within me over the last 36 months. My hand rested gently on the slight, proud curve of my stomach. At 4 months along, my second pregnancy was no longer a source of terror, but a joyful anticipation. The soft patter of little feet announced my son, Leo, now 3 years old, toddled into the room with the determined focus only a toddler could muster. He was a beautiful, bright-eyed boy with Jingchen's dark hair and my stubborn chin. He tugged on the hem of my dress, holding up a slightly squashed dandelion he had undoubtedly pulled from the estate's meticulously manicured gerodons. "For Mama," he announced proudly, his voice a perfect mimicry of his father's serious tone. Wincing slightly as my center of gravity shifted, and accepted the weed with the reverence of a queen receiving a crown. "Thank you, my love, it's beautiful." I kissed his forehead, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and sunshine. "Are you ready, Mrs. Liu?" I turned to see Jingchen leaning against the doorframe. He was dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, his tie perfectly knotted, looking every inch the powerful CEO he was. But when his eyes fell on me, the formidable businessman vanished, replaced by the man who had held me together when I was falling apart. His gaze, filled with a love that still sometimes took my breath away. "I am now," I smiled, taking his offered hand. Tonight was the annual Lu Group Charity Gala, the most significant social event of the season. It was also the night I had chosen to make my official debut, as more than just Jingchen's mysterious wife. Over the past 2 years, while raising Leo, I had quietly poured my passion into a new venture. Using my art history degree and a small seed investment from Jingchen, I had founded Lumiri, an independent jewelry brand that focused on ethically sourced gemstones and modern, minimalist designs. Tonight, Lumiri would be unveiled to the city's elite. The ballroom was a sea of glittering gowns and expensive cologne. As Jingchen and I descended the grand staircase, a hush fell over the crowd. Whispers rippled through the room like a wave. I kept my head high, my hand resting securely in the crook of Jingchen's arm. We were a united front for the first hour. It was a whirlwind of polite conversation and genuine interest in Lumiri. Several high-profile socialites expressed admiration for my designs, and I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was my own success, built on my own merit. Then, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, charged with a sudden, uncomfortable tension. I followed the collective gaze of the room toward the entrance. Standing there, looking like a ghost from a past I had worked so hard to bury, were Chen Yu and Lin Jiaojiao. They looked nothing like the polished couple who had sat on the velvet sofa 3 years ago. Jiaojiao's designer dress was from a past season, and her makeup was slightly too heavy, trying to yangai the lines of stress around her eyes. Chen Yu's suit was ill-fitting, and his face was pale, etched with a weariness that went beyond mere fatigue. They had been clinging to the fringes of high society, their fraudulent claims and bad investments having finally caught up with them. They spotted us across the room. I saw the exact moment recognition dawned in Chen Yu's eyes. His face drained of whatever color it had left. Jiaojiao's eyes widened, her gaze dropping instantly to the swell of my stomach, then to little Leo, who was happily holding Jingchen's hand. The jealousy and hatred that had once defined her were now replaced by a raw, unable to resist the pull of their own misery. They began to weave through the crowd toward us. I felt Jingchen's hand tighten slightly on mine, a silent offer of protection. I gave his fingers a gentle squeeze, signaling that I didn't need it. I had faced my demons before, and I had won. Chen Yu's voice was a Hoa Ross whisper as he stopped a few feet away. He stared at me as if seeing a mirage. "You look," I supplied smoothly, my voice rang clearly in the sudden quiet that had enveloped our small circle. "Chen Yu, I hope you are well." Jiaojiao's composure cracked. Her eyes were fixed on Leo, then on my stomach. "You have a son," she breathed, the words laced with venom. "And you're expecting another? You trapped him. You got pregnant to trap Jingchen, just like you tried to trap Chen Yu." A collective gasp went through the onlookers. It was a desperate, ugly accusation, born of pure spite. Jingchen's expression turned to ice. He took a step forward, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "You will watch your tongue, Lin Jiaojiao. You are speaking to my wife." But I placed a calming hand on his chest. I stepped forward, my posture regal, my voice calm and unwavering. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't need to. "Jiao," I said, my gaze locking onto hers. 3 years ago, in a penthouse not unlike this one, You pushed me and told me I was nothing. You were right about one thing. I was nothing then. I was a girl with no family, no money, and a broken heart. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. I saw the shame flicker in Chen Yu's eyes, the dawning horror of what they had lost. But I am not her anymore, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I built a life from the ashes you tried to bury me in. I built a business, a family, and a future. My husband did not ride me because I trapped him. He may ride me because I am his equal. He may read me because I am the woman he has loved for over a decade. I gestured to Leo, who was looking up at me with wide, trusting, and my children are not a trap, they are a blessing. A blessing you will never understand. Because you have never known what it means to build something real. I turned my gaze to Chen Yu. A's for you. Chen Yu, you offered me $50,000 to erase my child. Tonight I offer you nothing but my pity. You have spent the last 3 years chasing a ghost, while I have been living a life you could only ever dream of. The silence was absolute. Jiaojio's face was a mask of utter defeat. The cruel, triumphant woman from the penthouse was gone, replaced by a bitter, broken stranger. Chen Yu looked at me, really looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the full, devastating weight of his regret. He had held a diamond in his hands and thrown it away for a piece of glass. Jingchen stepped up beside me, his presence a solid wall of support. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His pride in me was a tangible force in the room. Jingchen said quietly to Anie Wargabard, please escort these two off the premises. They are no longer welcome at any Lu Group event. As they were led away, Jiao casting one hateful glance over her shoulder, I felt a profound sense of closure. The final chapter of my past had been written. Jingchen turned to me, his eyes softening as he brushed a stray curl from my forehead. Are you alright? He murmured, his voice from my ears alone. I looked at my husband, at my son, and felt the new life growing within me. I thought of the journey that had brought me here, from the rain-swept sidewalk to this moment of undeniable triumph. I am more than all right, I whispered, leaning into his touch. I am exactly where I am meant to be. The orchestra began to play a soft waltz. Jingchen bowed slightly, offering me his hand. May I have this dance, Mrs. Liu? I placed my hand in his. You may, Mr. Liu. As we swayed to the music, surrounded by the admiring gazes of the city's elite, I knew that this was my victory, not the revenge, not the public shaming of my enemies. My true victory was this, a life built on love, resilience, and the unshakable knowledge of my own worth. I had not just survived the storm, I had ran to dance in the rain. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind of media attention and business inquiries. My public confrontation with Chen Yu and Lin Jiao had inadvertently become the most talked about moment of the season. But instead of the scandal Jiao had hoped to create, it had solidified my reputation as a woman of strength and grace. Lumira's sales skyrocketed overnight, and my brand became synonymous with modern female empowerment. Yet, amidst the professional triumph, a quiet storm was brewing in my personal life. My parents had been watching. They had seen the news reports, the glowing articles about my jewelry line, and the photographs of me on Jingchen's ARM. They had seen the undeniable proof of the wealth they had so callously discarded. It happened on a crisp Tuesday afternoon. I was in my studio, reviewing sketches for Lumira's upcoming spring collection, when my assistant hesitantly informed me that 2 people were waiting in the lobby. They refused to give their names, but they had brought a small, worn. My stomach dropped. I knew, with a sinking certainty, who it was. I told my assistant to bring them up. When the door opened, the breath left my lungs. 10 years had ravaged them. My mother's hair was completely white, her face lined with deep creases of worry and regret. My father looked frail, his shoulders slumped in defeat. They were dressed in faded, outdated clothing that spoke of a life lived on the absolute edge of poverty. They stood awkwardly in the center of my sunlit studio, looking around at the elegant furniture and the framed design rods on the walls as if they were alien artifacts. One, my mother whispered, her voice trembling. Tears immediately welled in her eyes. She took a hesitant step forward, her hands reaching out as if she wanted to touch me, but was terrified I would pull away. My baby girl, look at you. I remained seated behind my desk, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I didn't stand, I didn't embrace them, I simply looked at them, maintaining the emotional distance I had spent a decade building. Why are you here? I asked, my voice even and devoid of the warmth they were desperately seeking. My father Clay read his throat, his eyes rotting around the room before settling on me. We saw you on the television. We are so proud of you. I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. You threw me out of your house when I was 19, pregnant, and freezing in the winter. You told me I was a disgrace. You told me never to come back. We were wrong? My mother cried out, collapsing into the chair opposite my desk. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. We were stupid, proud fools. We thought we were protecting our family's reputation, but we only destroyed our own hearts. We have missed you every single day, Wan. My father stepped forward, his voice thick with unshatia. Your brother, he made terrible choices. He gambled away everything we had. We lost the house. We have nothing left. He looked at me with pleading, desperate eyes. Would Aran asking for money? Wan, we want to know our grandchild. We want to be a part of your life again. I sat in silence, listening to the echoes of their past cruelty and their present desperation. The little girl who had once desperately craved her parents' love, wanted to forgive them. I wanted to tell them that it was okay, that I understood they had made a mistake. But I was no longer that little girl. I was a mother myself now. I thought of Leo, and the baby growing inside me. I thought of the unconditional, fierce love Jingchen and I gave them. I realized that family was not defined by blood, but by the willingness to show up, to protect and to nurture. My parents had failed that test in the most catastrophic way possible. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, my voice soft but unyielding. But I cannot give you what you are asking for. My mother looked up, her face streaked with tar. Please, we are your parents. You are my biological parents, I corrected gently, but you ceased to be my parents 10 years ago. You made your choice then. You chose your pride over your daughter's life. You chose to abandon me when I needed you most. I stood, resting my hands on the curve of my stomach. I have built a beautiful life. I have a husband who loves me, and children who are safe and cherished. I have forgiven you in my heart, because holding on to anger only poisons the vessel that holds it. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. And it does not mean opening the door to people who proved they cannot be trusted. My father's face fell, the last remnants of hope extinguishing in his eyes. That's it? You're just going to cut us off forever? I am protecting my peace, I replied, and I am protecting my children. I wish you both health and healing. But you cannot be a part of my future. I pressed a button on my intercom. Please escort these guests out. As they were led away, my mother turned back one last time, her face a portrait of absolute devastation. I watched them go, feeling a profound sadness, but also an immense, liberating lightness. The final tether to my painful past had been severed. I had not been cruel, I had been strong. I had finally drawn a boundary that could never be crossed again. That evening, Jingchen found me sitting on the nursery balcony, watching the stia. He didn't ask what had happened, he already knew. He simply wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder and pressing a kiss to my temple. You did the right thing, he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. I whispered, leaning back into his solid war. It still hurts. He soothed, his hands gently rubbing my arms. But you are safe now. We are safe. As I stood there in the quiet of the night, feeling the gentle flutter of my unborn child and the steady beat of my husband's heart, I knew he was right. The pain of the past was a scar, but it was no longer an open wound. I had survived the storm, and I had found my arbor. My family was complete, not because of the blood that connected us, but because of the unbreakable love that bound us together. And as I looked up at the vast, starry sky, I finally felt a sense of peace that I knew would last forever. The final chapter of my past had been written, but the most beautiful pages of my future were still waiting to be turned. 6 months after the Charity Gala, the Liu estate was once again filled with a different kind of anticipation. It wasn't the nervous energy of a business launch or the tense atmosphere of a confrontation. It was the pure, unadulterated joy of new life. I sat in the sun-drenched nursery, gently rocking in a plush armchair. In my arms my newborn daughter Lily slept peacefully, her tiny fist curled against my chest. She was a perfect blend of Jingchen and me. Up, thick lashes and my button nose. Across the room, 3-year-old Leo was having a very serious conversation with his favorite stuffed bar, explaining the intricacies of why we must be gentle with the new baby. The sight filled my heart with a war myth that no diamond or business accolade could ever replicate. Jing Chen stood in the doorway, having watched the scene in silence for several minutes. When I finally looked up and caught his gaze, a slow, tender smile spread across his face. He walked over and knelt beside my chair, his eyes never leaving our daughter's face. "She has your smile," he whispered, reaching out to gently stroke Lily's impossibly soft cheek. "And she has your stubbornness," I teased softly, careful not to wake her. "Leo has already tried to teach her how to stack blocks, and she refused to sleep until he stopped." Jingchen chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that was music to my ears. He leaned in and pressed a kiss to my forehead, then to Lily. "My two greatest treasures," he murmured. In the months following my PA Rent's visit, a profound sense of peace had settled over our lives. The public had embraced Lumiere, and my brand had become a staple in high-end fashion. But my true success was right here, in this room. Jing Chen and I had built a PA partnership that was unshakable. He was not just my husband, he was my greatest supporter, my confidant, and the father of my children. He had proven, day I, that his love was not a fleeting emotion, but a steadfast commitment. Our life was not without its challenges. Raising two young children while running a growing business was exhausting. There were sleepless nights, tantrums, and the occasional moment of doubt, but we faced them together. Jing Chen was an hands-on father, unafraid to get his designer suits dirty during diaper changes or to spend hours reading bedtime stories. He had healed the wounds of his own lonely childhood by creating a home overflowing with love and presence. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves outside turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson, we decided to take the children to the city's botanical gardens. It was a place we had visited often, a sanctuary of greenery in the heart of the bustling metropolis. Leo, his laughter echoing through the winding paths as he chased falling leaves. Jingchen pushed the stroller, his free hand securely holding mine. We walked in a comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of shared experiences and deep understanding. We eventually found a quiet bench beneath a massive, ancient oak tree. I sat down, letting out a contented sigh as I watched Leo play. Jing Chen sat beside, wrapping an mem around my shoulders and pulling me close. "Do you remember," he began, his voice soft, "the night I found you in the rain?" I nodded, leaning my head against his shoulder. "How could I ever forget? It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was the best and worst night of my life," he confessed, his gaze fixed on our son. "The worst, because I saw the pain you were in, and the best, because it gave me the chance to finally bring you home." I turned to look at him, my eyes meeting his. The raw, desperate love I had seen in his eyes that night was still there, but it was now tempered with a deep, abiding contentment. "You saved me, Jing Chen," I whispered. He shook his head slowly, his thumb tracing circles on my arm. "No, my love, you saved yourself. I just provided the umbrella." His words brought a lump to my throat. He was right. He had given me safety and love, but the strength to rebuild my life had always been within me. I had chosen to heal, to grow, and to embrace the future. As if on cue, Leo came running back to us, his face flushed with excitement and his hands full of brightly colored leaves. "Papa, look what I found," he exclaimed, proudly presenting his collection. Jing Chen and I both leaned down, admiring his treasures with genuine enthusiasm. "They're beautiful, buddy," Jing Chen said, ruffling his son's hair. "Should we find a special place for them?" Leo nodded vigorously, his eyes shining. "For Lily." Together, the four of us walked over to a nearby flower bed. Leo carefully placed his leaves at the base of a blooming chrysanthemum, a silent offering to his baby sister. It was a simple, innocent gesture, but it symbolized everything our family had become, a nurturing, protective, and loving unit. As we stood there, watching the autumn sun filter through the golden canopy above, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had been discarded, betrayed, and broken, but from those broken pieces, I had forged a life of unimaginable beauty. I had found a love that was unconditional, a career that was fulfilling, and a family that was my true north. Jingchen squeezed my hand, drawing me back to the present. I looked up at him, my husband, my partner, my soul. Then I looked down at our children, the living embodiments of our love and resilience. The storm had long passed, the rain had washed away the past, leaving behind a world that was clean, bright, and full of promise. I had not just survived, I had thrived, and as I stood there, surrounded by the people who meant everything to me, I knew that this was my happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending but a real, hard one, an infinitely precious beginning.